Imagine a world that is a really nasty place to live, more or less populated with players that always defect. Except there's a little cluster of tit-for-tat players that live in some kind of nucleus. And they get to play with each other a lot because they're geographically sequestered. They will start building up a lot of points, and also, because that translates into offspring, they'll start to take over the population. So, in fact, Axelrod showed that a little island of cooperation can emerge and spread, and eventually will take over the world, which is fantastic, 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 fantastic.
Fantastic. That's the thought I had when I came across this study. Perfect conformity to observable minimal rituals engenders trust, an experimental test of the signaling hypothesis. Great, so now not only do we have this completely naive, infantile, stupid idea that models that were created in the 1980s and run on computer simulations and their game theory is 100% analogous to everything in reality and can be wholly good. We now are going to add rituals to this thing. But this absurd philosophy goes so much further than that. This pseudo-spiritual, secular, sanitized, concentrated New Age ideology goes so far as to say we can have zero intrinsic motivation towards any morality. We can be total nihilists and total narcissists, and we're still going to create this utopian world just using these dynamics. If you don't believe me, listen to this guy.
How can cooperation emerge in a population of players who are self-interested, who are not trying to be good because they're good-hearted? You don't have to be altruistic. You could be looking out for number one for yourself and your own interests, and yet cooperation can still emerge.
So if we represent cooperation as being wholly good and individualism as being wholly bad, then yes, cooperation can spread and weed out all individual actors. We're even going to acknowledge the fact that this cooperation can spread among completely amoral, narcissistic, selfish nihilists. And we're going to do it with a grin on our face, without consideration to those who, as individuals, may want to act morally.
In fact, Axelrod showed that a little island of cooperation can emerge and spread, and eventually will take over the world, which is fantastic.
I'm not criticizing the science or the computer science per se or the logic behind it. I'm criticizing the interpretation and the application to real life. How do we distinguish between cooperation and corruption or collusion among completely amoral people? And then to top it off, researchers are like, hey, why don't we dabble in the occult? Why don't we do some rituals? That can only be a good thing because in their mind, in the contrived lab scenario and in the contrived algorithm from some computer from the freaking 80s, like literally 1980, the world they've built is one in which cooperation and trust always creates a net gain. Is that reality? Is it true that every cooperative conformist group that emerges automatically is a benefit to society as a whole? No, that's not true at all. The original premise behind this is the prisoner's dilemma, and they've sanitized it into this neutral thing. We're talking about prisoners escaping justice. Why not call it the pedophile's dilemma and say, hey, how did Jeffrey Epstein build this network and get away with it for so long? Why was everyone conforming and we get to the situation where we are now and everyone looks back and say, Why did no one do anything? Why did no one say anything? Why did nothing ever happen? This same mathematics and this same game theory and this same algorithm will give you the answers, but they, for some reason, have just decided to believe in all arbitrary conformity and all cooperation is automatically good, which is completely devoid of any lived experience or history. The ability for academics to have the mathematics or the theory and imagine that and understand the internal logic of that and completely ignore reality is scary. A system in which narcissists and nihilists can get together and cooperate and proliferate is not a utopia. That, in reality, is dystopian. You need the individuals who are willing to sacrifice and fight against that to correct the course. You need individuals who are uncooperative and who will speak out. That's Earth's history. That's reality. This philosophy is essentially social Darwinism 2.0. We can't look at Darwin and say Darwin advocated the Nazis killing everyone. And we can look at Axelrod, who did this initial research on evolution and cooperation. He's not necessarily advocating that everyone be narcissists or everyone be egoists. He wrote this article called The Emergence of Cooperation Among Egoists. He's not necessarily advocating that society be run by egoists or that everyone should be egoists. That's simply what he's able to model in his limited hardware. So I wrote an article called The Use of Signaling Cannot Identify Valuable Intrinsically Motivated Outliers. The point is to sort of address this whole ethos and to show that, yes, cooperation can come together among people who actually don't give a shit about what their supposed purpose of their institution is supposed to be about. And that's why you can have this massive amount of cooperation among people who don't benefit society at all or do what they purport to be doing. So instead of thinking of this as being, oh great, people can come together and cooperate despite the fact that they're totally egoist or narcissist, what it's saying is you're going to create this massive institution and you're not going to be able to identify the people who are actually the real ones, who actually want to be there to do something of intrinsic value or create intrinsic value. You cannot distinguish them by using traditional signals or metrics. In short, no, everyone being narcissist is not going to make society better.